Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on a point of personal privilege.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spoke earlier, and when we adjourn today, we'll adjourn in the honor and memory of Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. And I wish we weren't. I wish we weren't, because he should be alive, Mr. Speaker. I spoke in speaking to his legacy, his courage, to the fact that we armed him as a nation with the very best weapons of war to defend our nation on foreign soil. And then, Mr. Speaker, we very intentionally, in chambers such as this one, disarmed him when he came home. You see, Mr. Speaker, there have been bills carried in this body that would allow people like Colonel Shaw, who had 2 Bronze Stars and 3 combat deployments, incredible service and courage and training, to carry weapons in defense of our children on college and university campuses. Mr. Speaker, if a university would have me on their campus and I were a professor of political theory, I would use what happened in Virginia and Michigan this week as a case study in just how horribly wrong arguably well-intended policy can go. Let's walk through the facts. Mohammed Jallow, the murderer of American hero and son of Stanton, Virginia, Brandon Shaw, had been arrested and convicted as a terrorist. And Mr. Speaker, while our governor still hasn't called this terrorism, I will, because we know he was a terrorist. He shouted Allahu Akbar before he began shooting, and we don't know the motive, but I think that I'm allowed to say things that are true. He wouldn't have been able to murder Colonel Shaw if he hadn't been released early, a policy championed by people on one side of this chamber. He wouldn't have been able to murder Colonel Shaw if he had been detained and deported, having his citizenship status revoked after he was initially convicted of terrorism. He wouldn't have been a student at the Old Dominion University, I believe the 3rd largest commissioner of ROTC cadets in Virginia after VMI and Virginia Tech, if ODU had been allowed to ask him if he were a felon, but they weren't because of policies put forward and voted for by people in this chamber. He broke numerous gun laws. He was a felon in possession of a firearm. That didn't stop him from murdering a hero, Brandon Shaw. There was an obliterated serial number on the firearm. That didn't stop him, that crime, from murdering Brandon Shaw. He committed the shooting in a gun-free zone, which ironically didn't stop him from carrying the gun into the gun-free zone to murder Brandon Shaw. There was a theory that he aspired to commit another Virginia Tech shooting. And so all the legislation that we passed to prevent that did nothing to stop him from murdering Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. And so the answer, Mr. Speaker, I would submit to my students is not more legislation. In fact, the only person who would suffer a harsher penalty as a result of the work of this General Assembly is the person from whose car the gun that Mohammed Jallow stole was stolen. That person we've made a criminal. Makes no sense. And then, predictably, liberal Commonwealth's attorneys immediately come out and blame the gun. Here's a fact. If there had been a firearm sitting in the classroom on the day of the Virginia Tech shooting, from the day that the building was built until the day that the horrible tragedy occurred, no one would have died if a human being hadn't put that firearm into operation and taken human life. That's a fact. Now we'll digress for a moment to the Michigan synagogue and school shooting. Mohammed Ghazali drives his pickup truck, a vehicle with which some in this chamber aren't familiar, through the gate at the school and synagogue, and opens fire on 2 private security guards who are carrying guns that would be banned by this General Assembly in defense of children, where there is a shooter who seeks to create another Sandy Hook. So the instrumentalities used to defend the lives of those children and prevent another Sandy Hook were the very ones that this chamber would ban. In fact, our legislation is so bad that until I raised a ruckus and stomped my feet about the fact that it intentionally struck from the people allowed to carry firearms against this draconian and dangerous policy were private security guards, that there wouldn't even have been able to be private security guards at the building until the changes made yesterday. Now, I used to carry a Smith & Wesson 642 when I was a member of the Virginia Senate, and I decided the capacity of the magazine wasn't big enough, so I moved to a Glock 23. But I've been disarmed, so now I carry a Civivi Elementum. And why? Because the blade is 2.96 inches, which slips me in under the wire on what I'm allowed to defend myself with in this chamber. I can tell you guys one thing: if a shooter comes in here and starts shooting, you will wish I was armed, trained and experienced as I am, because they will not discriminate based on race or gender or political affiliation. But we have instead chosen to make ourselves unsafe in the name of safety. The irony, Mr. Speaker. Now I'll go to another school shooting, the Appalachian School of Law. I know this will shock you guys, but the delegate from Bedford, I believe, got a law degree from there. There was a school shooting where an immigrant in, I believe, 2003 went onto campus and executed 2 professors and a student, which was stopped before it got worse when 2 students ran to their vehicles and retrieved their personal weapons and neutralized the shooter. Guess what? You guys would make those weapons illegal too. Are we trying to prevent school shootings or have them be more costly so that we can blame the guns and then disarm the populace so that we can continue to do things like stifle free speech before an election? What's the goal here? So yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the delegate from Fairfax said thousands of people are killed crossing the street. And I thought, no way. And I Googled it, and I am willing to admit when I was wrong. She's right. She's right. About 7,500 people per year in this country lose their life in pedestrian situations. Let's compare that to the number of people who lose their lives with military-style assault rifles. You are 21.5 times more likely to lose your life in America crossing the street than you are to a military-style assault rifle, whatever the heck the definition of that is that you guys are using today. 21.5 times more likely. So I get a little tired, Mr. Speaker, of hearing people appeal to absolute emotion with zero rationale or logic when they say, we don't want our children to be afraid to go to school. They're afraid to go to school because you made them. They should be 21.5 times more afraid to cross the street, for starters. And if you look at the deaths from assault-style rifles, 95% of those are used by people in the commission of crime against other people engaged in the commission of crime. So they're probably about 250 times more likely to die crossing the street. But we won't tell the truth in this chamber. Well, guess what? I will. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the courageous ROTC cadets at Old Dominion University. God bless you. People like you made America great. You see, Mr. Speaker, our policy instructed those young men and women to run and hide, to take shelter in place, to get away from the threat. An ODU policy said you can't have a pocket knife on campus unless the blade is less than 3 inches. I have a sneaking suspicion that what we just witnessed was people that not only had the courage to defy a ridiculous, stupid, ill-informed, dangerous school policy to run and hide in place, but also to defy a ridiculous, stupid, uninformed school policy that said that they couldn't have even the simplest elements to defend themselves and others. And so they stood up. And Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I praise God that there was just enough toxic masculinity in that classroom this week to save the lives of countless others and actually prevent another Virginia Tech. Thank you.